They thought she was just another face in the crowd, a woman in her late 20s who ran the same path every dawn, ponytail swaying, earbuds in, eyes fixed straight ahead. Nothing special, nothing remarkable. But that morning, the river mist hadn't even lifted when a voice crackled over an old frequency no civilian should ever hear. Sergeant Cross, Sector 7 now. And in that split second, the quiet jogger by the river became someone else entirely. If you agree that real heroes never truly retire, like and subscribe, because this story is about one who didn't. The sun was still dragging itself up over the horizon when Emily Cross appeared on the old river trail, her pace steady, her breath calm. The city was waking up slow, fishermen setting out their nets, an old couple feeding ducks, the rhythmic splash of her sneakers meeting the earth. There was nothing extraordinary about her to a passing glance. Just a young woman jogging to clear her head, dressed in gray running gear, the kind you'd see on any other morning. But if you looked closely, if you watched her posture, the way her eyes never darted, how she scanned her surroundings without even turning her head, you'd notice something different. Something learned. Something disciplined. The cadets were the first to spot her that morning. 5 of them, maybe 6, young recruits from the local police academy on their group endurance run. Loud, cocky, laughing between breaths. The kind of youthful arrogance that comes before experience humbles you. They saw her from a distance, and one of them, a tall kid with a smirk too big for his face, pointed her out. There she is again. The river ghost, he said between gasps. The others laughed. She'd been jogging there every morning for weeks, always alone, always silent. They didn't know her name. They didn't know her story, but they had plenty of guesses. Probably some fitness influencer, one joked. Or a loner who likes pretending she's training for something, another added. Emily heard them. She always did, but she never reacted. That morning, she just smiled faintly to herself and kept running. The riverbank curved into a stretch of gravel where the fog thickened and the air turned cold. Emily slowed her pace, rolling her shoulders back, stretching her arms as the sun started to peek through the trees. A few feet behind her, the cadets caught up, panting, laughing, trying to act tougher than they felt. "Morning, ma'am," one of them called out, grinning. "You should think about joining the academy. You'd probably outrun half her squad." Emily glanced over, her eyes steady, not cold, not warm, just calm. "I've had my share of early runs," she said quietly. Her voice had a weight to it, something that made the laughter fade just a little. The cadets chuckled awkwardly, unsure how to reply. She took a sip from her water bottle and looked toward the horizon. That quiet gaze of someone who's always listening to something the rest can't hear. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. The river moved slow, the light danced on the water, and the sound of birds filled the morning air. It could have been any ordinary day, but Emily knew better. Years of training had taught her that silence like this rarely stayed. She crouched by the water, touching the surface with her fingertips, letting it slip through her hand. Her reflection wavered, and for a brief second, it wasn't the face of a jogger she saw. It was the reflection of a soldier. The same face, a few years younger, streaked with dust, her eyes sharper, her jaw set. A desert sun above her, a radio in her ear, and voices shouting coordinates through static. That was another life. Or at least that's what she'd been trying to tell herself for years. The academy cadets started stretching nearby, their voices carrying faintly through the morning haze. Emily stood, brushing off her hands, ready to move on. That's when it happened. A faint crackle, then another. The sound came from her waist, muffled by her running jacket. She froze. The cadets noticed. "What's that?" one of them asked. Emily's hand went instinctively to her pocket. Muscle memory, pure reflex. She pulled out a small black transceiver, worn down but functional. It wasn't a phone. It wasn't something you bought at a store. The static deepened. Then a voice burst through, sharp, urgent. "Sector 7, immediate response required. Sergeant Cross, do you copy?" The cadets fell silent. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Their brains were still trying to process what they'd just heard. "Sergeant?" Emily's body changed in an instant. The calm jogger vanished. Her spine straightened, her eyes locked onto something invisible beyond the trees. Years of quiet discipline resurfaced like a tide crashing through her veins. She pressed the radio to her lips. "This is Cross. Go ahead." Her voice, steady, clipped, professional, didn't belong to a civilian. The cadets stared. One of them, the tall one who'd been joking minutes ago, whispered, "Wait, did she just say Sergeant Cross?" The name hung in the air like a memory someone almost recognized but couldn't quite place. Then the radio crackled again. "Cross, we have movement near Sector 7. Possible live situation. You're closest. Confirm response." Emily exhaled through her nose, calm but fierce. "Copy that. ETA 5 minutes." She tucked the device away and started moving. Not running, not jogging, but striding with purpose. Her every motion had a precision no civilian could imitate. The cadets parted instinctively as she passed. None of them spoke, not even the cocky one. They just stood there, their hearts pounding, watching the woman they'd mocked 5 minutes ago transform into something unrecognizable, something powerful. She reached the top of the slope near the trailhead, where her car was parked, an unmarked black SUV, nondescript but clearly maintained. The morning light caught on the faint outline of an old decal on the rear bumper, a faded insignia that looked military. Emily paused for a moment, staring out across the river. The fog was lifting now, the water sparkling gold under the first real sunlight of the day. Her jaw tightened slightly. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She'd left that world behind, years ago, or at least she'd tried to. But the radio in her pocket, the code words still burned into her brain, the instinct to move without hesitation, those never left. Behind her, the cadets were still frozen by the water, whispering to each other in disbelief. Sergeant Cross. As in the one from the Red Line operation? No way, she'd be older. Maybe not, said the quietest among them. Some legends start young. Emily didn't hear them. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. She slid into the driver's seat, her hands already moving with the kind of confidence that comes from repetition, not thought. The radio lit up again as the engine started. "Cross, confirm movement." "You're active." "Confirmed," she said, moving to intercept. And as the SUV pulled away, the cadets watched her disappear down the road, the sound of her tires fading into the hum of the waking city. The river was calm again, the mist almost gone. But for those cadets, nothing about that morning felt ordinary anymore. They'd seen it. The moment a quiet jogger became a soldier again. The moment the past caught up with the present. And none of them would ever forget the sound of that radio call. The engine's low hum broke the morning quiet as Emily's SUV sped along the narrow road that traced the river's edge. Her hands gripped the steering wheel loosely, but her eyes, sharp, unwavering, never left the horizon. The calm jogger was gone. In her place was Sergeant Emily Cross, tactical operations veteran, field-trained to move before fear could even reach her pulse. The world outside the windshield blurred past. Trees, mist, sunlight, all irrelevant now. Only the mission mattered. The radio hissed again. "Cross, we've got eyes on 3 suspects near the bridge construction site. Possible arms cache. Approach with caution. Backup on route, 10 minutes out." "10's too long," she muttered under her breath. "I'll have it secured in 5. She turned off the main road, tires crunching gravel, as she pulled onto a dirt path half hidden by brush. She remembered this area. Sector 7 wasn't just a random coordinate. It used to be a training ground, years ago. The place where she and her unit ran combat drills in silence, long before civilians ever jogged those same trails. Funny how ghosts never stayed buried. She parked behind a fallen log, popped the trunk, and lifted a small black case. Inside, meticulous organization. Everything had its place: a compact vest, a sidearm, a comm earpiece. She slid each on with muscle memory so fluid it almost looked like choreography. Her reflection caught in the SUV window. Hair tied back, jaw tight, eyes harder than before. She hadn't worn that look in years. Not since the operation that ended her career and her peace in one blow. Redline. A word she hadn't spoken out loud since the day the desert went silent. "Cross, do you copy?" The voice on the radio again. This one older. Familiar. "Still breathing, sir." "Good to hear. Thought you were done with us." "So did I," she said quietly, stepping into the treeline. The forest swallowed her. Shadows rippled across her path, the smell of wet soil heavy in the air. Every sound stood out: the crunch of her boots, the buzz of a drone somewhere overhead, the faint echo of voices down by the river. She crouched low behind an embankment, Through the branches, she saw them. 3 men near a half-finished structure by the bridge, unloading crates from a van. Civilian clothes, but the posture was unmistakable. Not amateurs. Her breath slowed. No panic, just precision. She scanned the area. 1 lookout, 2 working the cargo. No immediate hostiles beyond that. She could take them, but this wasn't her mission anymore, not officially. She wasn't supposed to exist in the system. Even the radio she carried had been stripped from records years ago. Still, when trouble called, she answered. She moved like a shadow, down the slope, across the brush, 1 step at a time. Every motion calculated, every heartbeat steady. The first man never heard her coming. She disarmed him in seconds, the dull thud of his body hitting the ground lost beneath the hum of the river. The second turned, startled, reaching for something in his jacket. Emily was faster. A sharp twist, a drop, silence. The third, the lookout, bolted for the van. Cross, what's your status? The radio buzzed. 2 contained, she whispered. 1 running east. She sprinted after him, her boots kicking up dirt. The man reached the van, slamming the door open, only to freeze when he saw what was inside. Crates stacked high, stamped with an insignia no one had seen in years. Emily caught up, leveled her weapon. Step away, she ordered. The man turned slowly, hands raised. His face was pale, his eyes wide with recognition. You, he breathed. You're supposed to be gone. Guess someone didn't get the memo. He hesitated, then made a desperate move, reaching for his belt. But before his hand found steel, Emily's shot split the air. 1 clean route. The echo rippled across the water, scattering birds into the morning sky. For a moment, everything was still. The hum of adrenaline faded, replaced by the soft rush of the river below. Emily holstered her weapon, staring at the van, at the insignia painted faintly on the crates. Old, faded, but she knew it instantly. It was from her old unit. The same emblem etched on the metals locked away in her father's house. The same one she'd tried to forget. She pressed her earpiece. Command, target neutralized. You'll want to see this. There was a pause. Then the voice came back, low and serious. Cross, stay put. We're sending someone. She didn't respond. Her eyes lingered on the emblem one last time. No need, she whispered. This one's personal. Far behind her, the young cadets were still by the riverbank, oblivious to the storm unraveling just a few miles ahead. But by the time they'd hear the distant echo of that single gunshot, it would already be history in motion. Another story they'd tell in whispers. Emily Cross stood alone by the van, the wind pulling gently at her hair, the river catching the light like shards of glass. She had tried to build a normal life, routine, quiet, safe. But some people weren't made for quiet. Some people were born to answer when the world called. And today, it called her by name. The world felt quieter after the shot. The sound had rolled through the valley like thunder, then faded into stillness, leaving only the soft pulse of the river. Emily stood there, the scent of gunpowder faint in the air, her heartbeat slow and measured. She lowered her weapon, eyes fixed on the crates inside the van. Dust clung to the faded markings, the crest of a division long since disbanded, the same unit she'd served under when the world still felt black and white. She opened one of the crates. Inside were compact rifles, sealed military gear, and folders stamped classified. But the paper on top stopped her cold. It was a mission order, one she recognized word for word. Redline. The same operation that had ended her career, the one where she'd been left behind. She traced her fingers over the ink, half faded by time and humidity. Someone had resurrected ghosts she'd buried a long time ago. Cross, we're inbound, came the voice through her earpiece. Hold your position. She didn't answer. Her mind was somewhere else now, back in the desert, under a burnt orange sky, watching her team go silent one by one. Back then, she'd thought it was all over. But looking at those crates, she realized something no soldier ever wants to admit. Some wars don't end. They just change shape. Footsteps crunched behind her. She turned, half expecting backup. Instead, she saw the cadets, breathless, wide-eyed, uncertain. They'd followed the echo of the gunshot through the trails until they found her, standing among the wreckage of something far bigger than they could comprehend. For a long moment, nobody spoke. "Ma'am," one of them said finally, his voice trembling. "We heard. We thought you were in trouble." Emily looked at them, her face unreadable. "You shouldn't be here," she said, not unkindly. "This isn't a training ground." But another cadet stepped forward, his voice catching. "That's you, isn't it? Sergeant Cross. Redline Rescue. They taught us about it at the academy. You're—" She shook her head before he could finish. That was a long time ago. The tallest cadet, the one who'd mocked her earlier, stared at the crates, then back at her. "You saved 30 civilians that day. You stayed behind while everyone else." "I stayed because someone had to," she said quietly. "That's all." They stood there in silence, surrounded by the whisper of the river and the faint hum of the radio. It wasn't a movie moment. There were no cheers, no speeches. Just truth, raw and quiet. A black tactical truck arrived minutes later, its engine rumbling through the forest. Two men stepped out, officials, older, hardened. One nodded to Emily. "Good work, Sergeant. We'll take it from here." She gave a small nod back. "I'm not a sergeant anymore." The man smiled faintly. "Funny. The radio seems to think you still are." As they moved to secure the scene, Emily stepped aside, letting them pass. The cadets lingered nearby, unsure whether to salute or stay silent. Finally, she spoke, soft but firm. "Don't chase glory," she said. "Chase purpose. Glory fades fast. Purpose doesn't." The words landed heavier than she meant them to. She could see it in their faces, a shift, a kind of understanding that comes only when you see what real service looks like. Not the medals, not the stories, just the quiet, steady act of showing up when it matters. She turned back toward the water, the sun now fully risen. The mist was gone. The same river she'd jogged beside every morning now carried reflections of light that shimmered like silver. She thought of the letter she'd left unopened on her kitchen table, the one that had arrived 2 weeks ago, and signed, sealed with an insignia she knew too well. She hadn't needed to read it to know what it said. "We might need you again." Maybe this had been their way of testing her. Or maybe the world just has a way of calling its soldiers home when they're least ready. Either way, Emily knew this wasn't coincidence. The cadets watched her as she walked back up the trail, her pace steady, unhurried. To them, she wasn't just the mysterious woman by the river anymore. She was a story, living proof that legends sometimes live quietly among ordinary mornings, waiting for the radio to crackle again. By the time she reached her SUV, she could hear the city coming alive, traffic, horns, the normal rhythm of life resuming. She sat behind the wheel, took one long breath, and looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Not the jogger, not the soldier, just Emily Cross, someone who'd carried both lives and somehow made peace with neither. She started the engine, the radio silent now. The road stretched out before her, long and empty, and for a moment she allowed herself to smile. The mission was over, at least for now. But she knew the truth every veteran learns, that peace isn't the absence of battle. It's the strength to answer when it comes knocking again. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the hum of the tires and the whisper of the wind, an old radio frequency flickered to life, faint and familiar. "Cross, stand by for next assignment." She didn't flinch. She just kept driving, eyes steady on the horizon.